Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. Mitch, I know we're trying to find a working title, but we cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater. I wish more than anything.
Well, we have a whole list of lines from Into the Woods that we could choose from, thanks to Mr. Sondheim.
Yes.
But we also might have to pay royalties for them, so we're going to let that one go.
The funny thing is, I am not over Into the Woods yet. Arden Theater Company produced it here, did a great job, wonderful ensemble, and then Encores. We missed the original, run of that. So I was so glad that they were able to, that it was popular, and they put it up at the St. James.
Yeah.
So I got a chance to see it. What do you think? Do you think it's going to extend?
Anything that looks like it can make money, they will find a way to extend it.
They will find
and I don't even mean to make that sound negative. There won't be this cast.
If there's an audience for it, yeah.
No, there'll be an audience. Remember, they're planning to close in August, and August, September, it's slow time. So to have something that's getting a lot of press and a lot of good press, they're going to want to bring people in. So yeah. I think they'll extend it.
Yeah, we were thinking about how it is a vehicle. You can just keep replacing the cast and breathe new life into it.
Yeah, and there are enough leading roles that you can switch off, and you don't need to have, what do they have, 8 leading roles right now that name people in there.
Yeah,
they don't need that. They don't need that to sell a ticket.
Yeah. Well, welcome to The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnell Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
Well, let's get down to business.
Yay.
It is hot. It's hot. Hot!
Do you know there are people who actually go to Broadway shows and other theater because of air conditioning, just like they go to movie theaters. The thing is, if you can go to a movie for $20 or a Broadway show for $200, I don't know which one I might choose. And the movie, you can stay and watch the second showing.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if I would pay to go sit in a theater just to have the air conditioning.
But there are people, I've met them. They literally say, "You're from Indiana. Why do you choose our show?" Said, "It was so hot outside. We wanted air conditioning, and it was the one right in front of us." Literally, they have said that.
If I did live in town and I didn't have, if I lived in town and I had time but I didn't have anything else planned, then I would go for Rush tickets just to get air conditioning.
Yay, Rush tickets!
Yeah.
In the olden days, they used to call them student rush.
Student rush, yeah.
Yeah, because in those days they were restricted. The law said that is unconstitutional, even though some places still do it. I mean, who cared? It was like, but there were senior citizens who were, excuse the expression, bitching about it and went to court. So they had to change that.
So, speaking of Rush tickets, this process of Rush on Broadway, at least the way it is, where the first 2 rows are part of that Rush experience. Was Rent the first production to do that, or was it just more popular because of Rent at the time?
looking at my memory, the first one to really make headway with it, it was the producers and Rent. They did it slightly differently, and I'm not going to be an expert on this. Rent definitely did that. And you know what? You lost me on this one. Somebody who's a historian is going to have to use their memory and come on in. Press agents, where are you?
Any nerds out there can
Yeah,
educate us on it. Um,
but
it's funny.
let's wait a minute. Let's talk about discount ticket just for a minute.
Hmm.
Rush tickets, TKTS booth, the half price ticket booth in Times Square. Many cities have things like that now. Um, they seem to be saying, at least the way I took it when they first started doing it, we're going to let, even though we have these tickets left over, we're going to let you sit in not the greatest seats, but for a discount if you are willing to be inconvenienced in how you buy your tickets.
Mm.
So that means if you're 87 years old on a fixed income, you're willing to stand on line for 2 hours in the middle of Times Square in the rain or snow or the heat to hopefully find two tickets at half price. I mean, think about that, right? It wasn't like, oh, well, you can go to the box office and at a certain hour we turn this over. Or you go online, there's a special condition. It was, let's make sure people have to go through hell.
Yeah.
And it's not hell. I understand that. But it just irks me. We
Well,
want audiences to want to come. We
yeah.
want them. Let's roll out the red carpet. Come on in, Klieg lights. You come up to the theater, it should be, sound blaring. We want you here. Come meet our stars. Come have a wonderful time. This is an experience. And instead, it's, you enter at your own risk. Don't argue about your seats. Get cramped in. Some theaters have uncomfortable seats. Some have very comfortable seats. Um, I'm sorry. That's the way I
Yeah.
look at it.
So I don't know why I was lost at first. Of course, our number one resource is playbill.com, and of course they have an article uh, from sleeping on the streets to sweeping to from sleeping on the streets to swiping on a screen. The evolution of rush tickets from rent to digital lotteries.
There you go.
Yeah, I thought it was rent, but I didn't know before that because it's funny. I was having a conversation yesterday saying that the first musical I saw on Broadway was Rent, and the first musical I had experienced was Fame because I was in Fame in high school.
Right.
Yeah,
Was it the full production of Fame in high school, or was it an edited version?
it was. So, from what I remember, there was one song we took out because I ended when it was all said and done. I ended up playing the character of Joe Vegas, who is Latin. So they changed it to Joe Davis. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how we got away with it, but and so I do remember he had that character had a song called "Can't Keep It Down" about getting an erection in inconvenient places, and I was not able to sing that in the show.
And while we're there, the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee has
Hmm.
a similar song,
Yes.
and there was great discussions. I was in the room talking about whether or not they were going to move the show to off Broadway and then Broadway with that song cut. There was a
Mm.
lot of discussion. They wanted a 100% G-rated, family-friendly show, which they thought it was. And of course, Bill Finn, the composer, writer, said, no way. It comes with everything or nothing, and it
Yeah.
stayed that way. And
What
it was,
was
a delightful song. It was fun.
what was the name of the song?
My unfortunate erection. I think that's the actual name. Again, go look it up. But I'm pretty sure that's it. And oh, the wonderful actor who sang it in New York. Oh God, I see you're
Oh,
taxing my
yes.
memory here.
It's My Unfortunate Erection or Distraction.
Okay,
Chip's Lament.
Chip's Lament. There you go. They tried to give it a different title.
They probably, yeah, depending on where you were.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
And he
Uh,
walked around. He was handing out free candy to the audience while he's singing it.
yeah. I uh I I don't know, like, I think I remember at the this year's Tony Awards opening. Um wasn't there a moment where they talk about here's the moment where we go into the audience
Mm-hmm.
and made a whole thing about it, how, like, and everybody's looking around like, don't pick me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so funny. It's like,
I,
you want to be immersed in the experience, but you don't want to be part of the show.
that fourth wall is so important.
Yeah.
I am not interested. I didn't come in here, pay me, and I still don't want to be on stage.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's my
So,
problem with improv.
yes.
They always involve the audience.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Throw us out a word, like, you can't say anything because 'cause they'll be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You with the hair. Okay. Now we're gonna keep going back to that dude."
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so, a couple of things I wanted to talk about today was, cheating and stealing and,
What a lovely topic.
work-life balance. Yeah, I feel like there's always drama. Drama.
Well, and they relate to each other, I
Yeah.
think. First of all, for those of out there that may know me, um, I spent over 25 years in the music industry as well as theater. I was multitasking. There are crooks on every corner in the music industry. So when I returned to theater, what a relief. I mean, we're not talking about the music industry. I'm not even going to go into how blatant it was and the efforts made and the big stars who had money stolen from them and the different and very clever ways to do it. So you can't really take someone to court, although in some cases there were people who ended up in jail.
Mm.
Uh, Came back to theater, and the first thing I remember is, my God, everybody here is honest. I like these people. No one's trying to get away with anything. That said, as managers, we were taught how to spot theft. And theft can happen in every department from stagehand to ushers to management. And of course, most importantly, the box office. If you're taking in $3 million a week at Hamilton, that's very, very enticing.
Mm.
Now, how do you do that? There are computers. Oh, by the way, in the days before computers, it was so much easier. You just
Mm.
slip that cash into your pocket. But again, managers are trained to try to recognize this. We used to, in the early days, the first thing we would do when we got the job is we'd go into the theater and count the seats. Every single seat. And then you would compare it against the plan, the theater plan, the seating plan that they had. And then you'd have to compare it against when there was a computer, what seats are in the computer. Because
Mm.
very often the last show that was in there, they would have put the soundboard somewhere and taken out 10 seats.
Mhm.
But they never bothered to put those 10 seats back in the computer. So
Ah.
now you've got 10 seats in which no one's looking for. and you can sell them. Now that's pretty blatant. But
Mm.
there's another thing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it's just miraculous. It's a thing called ICE, and it has nothing to do with immigration, and it has nothing to do with your cold drink. But it's a brilliant, brilliant idea. When we set up tickets in a computer, we categorize them. There are the seats at every price, and they each have their own, like an Excel program. They each have their own column. So you decide which location's going for which prices, and when you have a special discount, they move seats that are going to be allowed to be in the discount over to a special column. Well, house seats, which are the producer's special seats and are used often for critics or celebrities, that
Mhm.
has its own category, as do premium seats, which are, sometimes double the price of the normal seat. Well, the box office can make a deal with a concierge at a hotel. Concierges get uh, asshole rich people who walk up to them and say, "Oh, Hamilton, biggest hit on Broadway. I want the best seats and tonight." And they walk away. And the concierge's job is to make everyone happy. And funny how the concierge is able to find not just two, maybe four of the best seats for this obnoxious rich person that night. That's because he made a deal with someone at the box office.
Mm.
And the box office, let's say the seats cost $300, they're premium. Box office got $300 for every seat. There isn't anything in that computer that is illegal. But the concierge charged $1,000 to the obnoxious rich person per seat. That leaves $700 to be split between the box office personnel and the concierge. That's how they steal money. And it's
So
called
how
ICE.
so
Because it's
how do
on.
they
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, so how do they get the money? Because the hotel is itemizing everything, but like you can't add that to the bill. Like how do you get the money from the guests?
Well, I'm not going to give you every
No, I
detail,
mean, like,
but yeah, but
how
no,
do they
it's
how do they
a
do it
lot
and
of
not
it's off to
track?
the side. Look, this is what I'm going to need.
Mm,
It's the same thing any concierge who's trying to please someone. Let's start with they're doing it for the right reason. It's their job to make people happy, and if you're in a Four Seasons hotel, you don't say no to Donald Trump. You don't say no
well,
to the Secretary of State or whoever is coming in, or
I would.
a foreign dignitary.
If
You
you
will
have a
say,
problem saying no to Donald Trump, call me.
okay, well now, but let's say it's
The law firm
a foreign
Republican
dignitary, or
followers.
anyway. So that's again without going into detail, but and the glorious thing, people say, what do managers do? We're trained. We know how to find this and to be without looking like we're actually watching.
Mm,
We can discover this stuff, and that's why part of our job. I remember being told by a producer, "Why do you need to walk in the house every night?" Because I'm looking for the clues
yeah.
that all of a sudden there's an empty row. How come the box office says it's sold out?
Mm,
Where'd they hide the extra money? Where'd they hide the extra seats? Who didn't show up? They all lead, and it's every night you have another issue. But the great thing about theater, and part of it is because we do know how to find this stuff, is I'm going to go 99% of everyone at a box office is honest. They really have turned it around. It wasn't that way when I was younger.
mm,
There were a lot of cigar smoking box office treasurers who were the nephew or the uncle of somebody who owned a theater, or who
yeah.
knew the skeletons in the closet of someone who owned a theater, right?
I so I have a box office woe. Um,
That's a great
I
word. Whoa.
a box office
Let's work that into our working title next week or
box
next time.
office woes. I should
Woes.
yeah.
It's
Woes.
a good word.
Woes. So I worked in a box office as a manager,
Hmm.
and in one of our leadership member of our leadership hired a couple of young adults in the spring to make a little extra cash for prom and everything. And they kind of let them get away with a bunch of things. They were just
Hmm.
things that, like, they seemed sort of innocent, but it was like, I was pointing them out, but because they were young, not
Right.
because of
Right.
anything other than that. But one thing I had noticed is that one of them would always bring their purse into the box office.
Ooh.
And that is like such a no-no. I mean, like, I don't know anywhere where you can bring your personal bag anywhere near the money,
Well,
you
I'm going
know?
to correct you. All the Broadway box offices, you bring your coats, you bring your bags, you just drop it off in the corner.
Well, in the
It's
corner is one thing, but sitting right under your,
oh yeah,
workstation is
no,
another. So I would always point this out, and I would say, like, we have lockers downstairs. Like, you're supposed to put all that stuff there, and it's like, and then I think some of the argument was like, well, what if it's like, feminine products and everything? And I'm like, well, you gotta, whatever the
all
thing.
right.
Anyway, we got a new ticketing system, and I was upstairs talking to the manager about something else, and we just decide to look at the look at the system, look at the run a quick report, and we noticed that $1,200 worth of sales had just been refunded.
Uh huh. Yeah.
And I said, hate to be the one to say I told you so, but it was pretty clear. It was on one register. It was a complete, just a refund of a block of tickets. And because where we did have a camera in the box office, but there was a blind spot, and that was a blind spot.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
we couldn't really catch the person ultimately, but we knew that it was right there. So instead, what we did is we just said, so we think we think the evening sales are going to be slow, so we're going to go ahead and let you go early today. And it was like, okay, you want me to count out? I was like, no, 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 I'm gonna take care of it. Go downstairs, get your bag. I'll come up, and when you come up, I'll validate it for you. So we check it, we run everything, and it's all there and everything. And ultimately, we couldn't fire them. We ultimately had to. They made up some excuse
I
to,
bet
like,
you
lay them
could,
off.
but who wants getting the
Yeah,
legal stuff?
they
But
ultimately.
by the way, and this is actually what you did is very similar to what they do to balances. If you're dealing with a million, $2 or $3 million a week, right, which is in the hundreds of thousands per performance, every box office statement
Mhm.
is you must get three signatures stating the amount I see on this chart is the
Yeah.
amount that's going into the bank,
Mhm.
and that is the company manager, the house manager, and the box office head treasurer. That's three
Yeah.
people who are legally liable. So whoever did it, we have to be looking for that stuff. And by the way, the one thing I wanted to bring up, which is really um, the worst part right now, are the brokers.
Mm.
Because now you can buy tickets online, and there are all these companies. And I remember, and this happens often. I was working on an off Broadway show, and three young teenage women came up with tickets that weren't from our theater, and they were in locations that people were already sitting. And they said they bought it from a broker in Times Square. Well, go back to the broker because he stole your money. He had no right to sell you those tickets. They don't
Mm.
exist. Well, they couldn't get to the broker, blah, blah, blah. Uh, Me being the nice softy that I am, I let them sit and watch the show. And then we turned in the broker to the authorities. I have no idea what happened, although some of them do get arrested now that there are some laws in New York State. I don't know why they just don't crack down on all of them. But they, and again, what a lot of them do is say, it's a hard ticket, dear Evan Hansen, even though it's not at the moment.
Hmm.
So it's a $200 ticket, but you have to give us $250, and then we'll take care of it. And people give it, and they pocket the $50. So it doesn't go to the show, it doesn't go to the salaries, it doesn't go to the people working on it, and that's in addition to their ticket commission, which they're allowed to get.
Mm.
Right? It's $250 above that, and their laws now make this is a major crime, but you got to catch them
Yeah.
anyway.
They're like
I'm,
Pokemon.
yep, but in the music business, it's harder to find someone who isn't on the take. Managers, agents, and I apologize to all those honest people. I know plenty of them, but it just feels like you're always looking out for the guy who's trying to take your client's money and
Mm.
just sneak off with it. Called double dipping, triple dipping. They have ways to make money off of artists, major stars, Whitney Houston, Bette Midler, Cher. They've all been ripped off, and I've met the people who ripped them off, and they are proud that they ripped them off.
Well, it always gets me, like, you know, of course, if the opportunity is there, there are some people that will seize it, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately it is, if you're not paid well, there's definitely more risk here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember working in museums and um, working in museums over the years, and there was always a concern at coat check. Like there was always someone at coat check who gives in their coat and they'll say, "Will I get this back? Is it going to get stolen or something?" And it was like I was working coat check one time. This was like the third person to make this joke. Like it was crowded and everything, and I was like, "Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to assure you that your coats are safe in our coat room. The museum pays us well enough so that there is not a concern. If you check your coat, we will give you a ticket. That ticket corresponds with the ticket that is with your coat, so you are safe." And it was so ridiculous. Like, no, I don't want your fur coat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unless you're Jeffrey, then Jeffrey tries on your fur.
Uh,
I don't mind because I've tried on your fur.
this is we need a song interlude, Darnell. Go ahead, please give
I
us
know.
something.
I don't have one yet.
Anything the old shows, Fiorello, How to Succeed in Business, everything
We're
he
in the
talks about.
money.
There you go.
We're in
Yeah,
the money. That's it. Because
that's it. Good enough. That's
we
what we
definitely don't
needed.
have the rights for that one.
But here we go again, paying people. And look,
Yes.
we know how. Look, I'm in the middle of working on readings.
Hmm.
Finding the money when you're not filthy rich and you don't have, deep pockets, or you don't have relatives with deep pockets.
Yeah.
Everything you want to treat people fairly, and a lot of these smaller nonprofits, um, they struggle.
Hmm.
The shame to me is the larger nonprofits have plenty of money, and yeah, the people running them, they deserve to make a good salary, but not. Here we go again. The one percenters down to the bottom tier, they're making something like 3,000 times what the workers in their theater are making.
Mm.
And that seems for a nonprofit to be a little bit questionable.
Yes. Yes. And you also have to understand that when you're paying like minor ducats and that
Mm-hmm.
this is a thankless job, you can't just pile a mountain of responsibility on somebody that you're not paying well to begin with. And
Yeah.
I've seen there's a lot of ways that people do it. They're just sometimes people are just nice people. You know, they're just nice the way they.
Yes.
You're so nice. You're not good. You're not bad. You're just you know. Uh, they might ask whether someone is capable of doing this thing. And because someone wants to be a team player, they might say, yes, they are, that they can. And so now it's their responsibility.
Yeah.
And I remember another place I worked where no one wanted to raise their hand and like make suggestions, because if you made a suggestion, like it was now yours, like you had to own
Mm,
it and run with it. It was like, no, I like I would say many times, many places I've worked, like I have ideas because you have the infrastructure that can make this happen. Like you don't have to do this, but you're saying the only way to do this is if I now take this on as my responsibility, but I'm in a totally different role. Like if I'm giving you marketing ideas, I'm not your marketing director. This is just
right.
an idea. Like I would always say, if this is a good idea, run with it. Take full credit if you have to. I just think if I was in the position, this is something I would consider, or at least kick around to
And you
figure out if
want
there's
people
a
to
way.
do that. You want think tanks. You want to use everyone's brain because sometimes they are seeing it from a perspective that is so helpful.
Yeah.
And the second you set up a hierarchy where you don't want their opinion and there are plenty of leaders that talk down to people and just
Hmm.
assume you're here to learn, get out of my face. You only get to talk to the person in the middle. I don't want to hear from you. Um, it, it's a major problem. And again, it comes down to leadership, but it's not just in the theater certainly. And we do love working with our colleagues in the theater comparatively, I guess, to and I'm guessing to an Amazon warehouse.
Mm,
But I may be wrong. I don't know.
yeah.
And that's the thing. The question is, though, if you're making minimum wage working at a theater in a job that no one's talking to you about, that they're not sharing their company's ideas or just moments, the good moments, and all you do is get to say, your seat's over there, sir, right? I don't know that that's worth minimum wage.
No.
I think people should. I mean, of course, we all need jobs, and you what
I
leave
know, but
show business? We
you
all
can
want to be in
find
show
other
business.
you can find other ways, like, just because we're in theater, for example, it's possibly like you can think about incentives that might sort of offset some things. Like, okay, you're working in a box office, you sell tickets to a show you can't afford to attend,
Mm-hmm.
but because you work there, you have access to tickets to a show you can't afford.
Except, and you brought this up, your work, the work life balance.
Mhm.
I have been at plenty of shows where the box office was not given any time off to see the show.
Yeah, it's like,
It's like, and then sometimes they're so tired, they're working such long hours, they just want to go
yeah,
home and eat.
you're like, you know what? Yeah, many times I've been in a space where we've been working so hard for whatever the event is. I'm like, no, I'm going home. I've been here all
Yeah.
day. I don't have time or interest to be a part of this now, because you know, I've been behind the scenes working on it. It is something that it drives me crazy. Like I think about it all the time. Like now's the time where you start thinking about maybe pulling in some interns,
Mm-hmm.
to help you clean up at the end of your season and prepare for your next season. But the thing is, like, you have to remember, interns are here to learn. And, sure, you hand them responsibility, but you don't say, like, by the way, you're the marketing department for however long you're here. And, they're supposed to be working alongside someone who is primarily doing this. And then you're showing them, like, okay, now this is a great example of how we would handle a situation like this. And then you let them drive a little bit, but ultimately you're at the wheel. But a lot of people don't do that. They just end up leaving them like, okay, you know, old school, it was about filing. and like a bunch of all the things that no
Yeah,
one had time to
yeah.
do.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, if none of you are doing this, I don't know how me doing this is helping me pursue my career goals. If none of you even want to touch this,
Yeah,
and I think it's such a hard thing, especially for nonprofits, because if you can't afford to adequately staff. Um, there is a thought that you can have interns, but sure, you can have interns. Maybe have an intern help you lay a foundation for something by this is something they want to learn as well. So they're helping you by being in on the ground floor, but ultimately you should be setting something up that you're still primarily leading on, but you got an extra hand in.
right.
And I think
And
people lose sight of that a lot.
along with that, especially talking about the intern in my day, we didn't have interns; we had assistants, and they
Mm,
actually got some money. It wasn't a lot, but part of this is saying, okay, you're going to learn as much as you can, but we want you to open your mouth, ask a question. Maybe we haven't thought of that question. Maybe we're going to take the risk, and you get to talk to the subscriber over there. But because you saw the show and because you heard what the marketing department was doing and whatever, you might be able to answer a question and maybe get them excited about what they're about to see, or at least collect a question and say, I promise you, I will call you back with the answer. And sometimes having someone do that is enough. But if you tell them you stand over there and then I want you to file these files, by the way, an intern, they don't know where to file things. You
I'm
can, I mean, one of the
gonna
worst
file this all under
ideas. Yeah.
F. They're gonna be like, "Where are
Oh
the
my
files?"
goodness.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness
So
gracious.
so let me ask, uh, since we're talking about work-life balance,
Yes.
when it gets all out of hand, when is
Oof.
it time to leave the wood?
Well, first of all, as someone who has, every show I work on, when it ends, I'm unemployed, right?
Mhm.
And certainly some of the nonprofits, which I could have stayed at for decades, after a few years, you go, that's the clue. That is the clue that tells me this is not where I'm going to find my family. And
Mm,
that is on a show that opens and closes, like a Broadway commercial venture. Pretty much the show tells you, right? Um, so I can't quite use that as the same factor. But for a nonprofit, I've always found that it's the family issue.
mm,
I know I was lucky. My first nonprofit was the New York Shakespeare Festival with Joe Papp. And my Lord, if I could have stayed there my entire life with Joe, I would have. I mean, my career was starting to move up, and I was offered a new job after 9 years. And it was like, I was just encouraged. This is a good step for you, blah, blah, blah. So I saw it as a positive move. But thinking back, oh, Lord, what a family.
mm,
And another nonprofit I worked for, I heard someone, I was the managing director, but I heard somebody in the upper echelon scream out that because we were talking about how some interns and certain assistants were working too many hours into the night, and they were actually doing some dangerous things because they were so tired. And I was
mm.
trying to correct it. And I had someone yell out, I don't give an F about those kids. It was at that moment that I said, this is not my teammate.
No, no.
And I didn't quit the next day. You have to, you know, you don't want to hurt the institution. You don't want to hurt the people working there. You work your way out of it. But I made the decision on the spot.
Hmm,
And I'm not trying to be a softy here. Um, you know, I've left, um, well, like I said, most of them leave me because they close. So
Yeah.
but uh, part of it is not about leaving, it's about growing. And I would suggest to anyone who is under my age that the next job you take, you should say, hey, this is uh, a step up. And that's enough reason to leave. There's no guilt. You got what you could out of it. You hopefully have given something to your institution along the way. And then that's it.
Yeah.
It's not supporting you
And
emotionally,
and
health
sometimes
wise.
the growth that is the growth potential that exists is not
Hmm.
growth in the direction that you want to go in.
Correct.
And you do have to think about that. Yeah, I feel like I'm constantly weighing those things. You get to a point where you're like, okay, so financially I'm growing in these careers, but I'm not being tested, you
Mm.
know, or, I'm not, maybe I don't have as much responsibility. Like, there are definitely jobs, like, because I've been on both sides. I've been on both sides of a fence where, in theater, I'm on the administrative side, but then in the rest of arts and culture, I've been on the technical IT side. And I think about it all the time. I'm like, am I growing in this role, or am I just making, a decent living? And there's many times where you have to decide, like, I'm okay. I'm going to do the math because I'm doing it all the time to figure out, is everything maintained? Am I able to do everything I need to do? Like, and sometimes if you feel like you need to step back from a job that's taking too much from you, you might have to mentally check out before you can physically check out.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, but the
But
one thing that you haven't
constantly
brought up,
making
and
an assessment.
the people who stay at these institutions, and let's be clear, theater or not, a nonprofit is an institution, right?
Hmm.
It has a few other nice benefits. People who stay there, they're thinking about money, family. If you have children, guess what? Having a job matters. Having
Hmm.
a secure job matters.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's enough to say, I may not be growing, but I'm growing at home. And
Mm.
therefore, I'm bringing the money, and I know I don't mind going to work because it is theater. I kind of, I'm good at what I do in the, we keep using marketing, but, or subscription office or the box office or even a stagehand. A lot of stagehands. But again, a great thing about commercial theater, not just nonprofit commercial theater, with the exception of Cats, A Chorus Line, Hamilton, and a few others, everything closes. I mean, they
Hmm.
all close eventually, but that the joke line in a chorus line is everything closes, including this one, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we were all thinking, no, it doesn't. This does not have to close. This can run forever. Cats was announced as now and forever. That was their marketing slogan.
Yeah.
You know, and Phantom is still running at 35 years. So it is possible, but there's still exceptions. The rest of the time, the show closes. You're out of work.
Hmm.
So to me, that scares a lot of people. A lot of people I know. I got used to it, and I
Yeah.
saw it, especially talking about work life
Hmm.
balance. I was exhausted when a show closed. I needed at least a month to sit at home watching television, eating all the worst foods before I was ready to go back into an office and start working again. They had me thinking 24/7 about the show. Even when I was with relatives and friends and lovers, it didn't matter. I was thinking about the show. And often when the show was in trouble, I was working 14, 15-hour days, 7 days a week, but not getting paid for it. You
Mm.
want to help. There's no one else to do it, you think, right? You don't want to
Yeah.
disappoint your boss or whoever you're working with. It's horrible. And the unions do the best they can. but they can't go in there and say, you shouldn't be working 14 hours. Stop. Well, I don't want the show to close. People have to get paid. I'm the one writing the paychecks. So I'm going to work. They won't give you an assistant because that costs more money. And the assistant has to be trained. There takes up more of your time. You can't win. It's we're talking all the negatives in this, but we need some reality out there. And we're talking about the new normal that supposedly is supposed to come out of the pandemic. Well, most of the theaters I see are kicking and screaming just to return to the old normal.
Mm,
They're not even willing to
yeah.
consider doing things slightly differently so that their staff is happy and maybe wants to stay there forever. Wouldn't that be amazing to have that I had that at the Public Theater, the New York Shakespeare Festival, by the way. I to this day, I wish I was back there. It
I
was it was
yeah.
just amazing. And by the way, talk about work life hours. Our my job ended at 6 o'clock every day. I chose to stay to 9 p.m., 9:30 on some days because I wanted to be there. But if I had relatives out of town, we're going to dinner, no problem. Nobody was expecting me to hang out.
Hmm.
And I don't think that's true at most other theaters. So it's a hard balance. I don't know, where
It
the
seems,
answer
it,
is.
but it seems like we would embrace technology more if we were trying to find that work life balance. There's a whole lot of things you can do. Like I remember, working at another organization. Like there were a lot of things where if you sent an email once upon a time, you sent an email, you couldn't get you couldn't get a response to that email until you got back to your desk and read that email.
Hmm.
But then we had smartphones, so you can answer those questions from anywhere, and it's not a it's
It can backfire though, and you know this. When we first got email, okay, this is
Mhm.
before smartphones, all right, um, and I no harm done. This was Disney, but it was um, an earlier version of their theatrical division. So the people now do it right, I think.
Yeah.
But at this time, they were first getting their act together. I remember the production stage manager of Beauty and the Beast. No, it wasn't Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, saying when she got home from a 12-hour day, matinee and evening, running the show, there were 105 CC mails waiting for her from vice presidents in California
Hmm.
because they don't know how Broadway works and they CC everyone on the production. And you were expected to reply before the morning so that when they got to their offices, they could see an answer, even if I don't know or somebody else is going to answer this. So she had to first go home and answer 105. It wasn't even to her, but it was part of her job. We have to still have people who say the technology needs to work for us. And you, Darnell, are one of those people who know how to do that. There are a lot of people who only say, I need it in triplicate, as opposed to this is how it's going to help,
Hmm.
right? And that,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you on yours because I agree with you about technology,
Oh,
but
no,
someone's,
no,
but
not at
it
all.
can
I
be
mean,
a horror.
I've been thinking about it because, yeah, it does feel like some of the some of the topics that came up at the beginning of this pandemic, where are they now? You
Yeah.
know,
Mm-hmm.
um, sure, you might have a DEI committee, but
Yeah.
if you still can't afford to adequately compensate the people that work for you, then you will. I and oh, the thing that I was going to say is that I see it a lot in personal relationships. But it's also there in business. Like they will always find exceptions. There's always an exception that allows the can to be kicked a little further down the road. And that's the part that's frustrating because for me, I'm looking at you know, there's a whole bunch of guidance where they say, you know, ask yourself, will it matter a year from now? Yes, because it'll matter
Hmm.
tomorrow, and it'll matter next week, and I'll still be salty about it in 3 months. You know, uh, you know. So yeah, but there are a lot of people out there who look for those exceptions to just not do the right thing,
Yeah, and the
and
politicians aren't only in Washington.
no.
They're trying to save their butts in their jobs. They don't want to create more work for themselves, so keeping things the status quo helps them, they think.
Mm,
And I'm going to go a step further and say most of these people aren't smart enough to know what to do about it. And
yeah.
it's their own inadequacies that cause them to say, let's have a committee talk about it,
Mhm.
right? Instead
Yeah.
of there are one or two things you can do right at the spot while you have a committee. No, no, no. They'll make recommendations, and we'll talk to them again in 6 months. Whew, we did something.
And
It's it's
that
horrible.
always gets to me. So I don't really know. Like, it's like, and then if someone's telling you how this is affecting them, because everybody doesn't have the confidence to speak up. But
Mm,
if they are telling you, and then you're gaslighting them and making them think otherwise, or, you know, don't lie to them and tell them it's temporary. It's not temporary. This isn't temporary. And also, the same way I looked at vendors, it's not my problem that you have other clients. When I call you, I'm the only client that matters, you know?
right.
So I don't care that you have other employees. I'm the one talking to you. It's about my relationship with you. But then there's this like, well, you could just not work for us. I'm like, because I'm telling you that this thing you know is wrong is, you know, needs to be addressed. It's like, you know, and I do feel like a lot of people get stuck in that where they feel like I really need this job, and as much as also need those other things I asked about, you know, I just have
Hmm.
to, you know, pick my battles. But the thing is, like, you can't perform. You can't be the best in your role if you don't have these things. And I know not everyone is asking themselves like, is this the most ideal thing you need to, you know, be on a soapbox about? Um,
Yes. I mean, I don't think, quite honestly, at this moment in time, I don't know that there's, and there are tons of important issues. You know that. I don't want to
Mhm.
do comparisons, but if
Yeah.
this is not up there with tied for number one, not the only thing, depending on who you are and what your situation is, there's so much to deal with, but it is not any less than the number one spot. And it's got to be thought of that way because the second you make it number two, we go right back to the system we've had.
Hmm.
Now, how do you do that? Well, that's why you have think tanks. And by think tanks, that means conversations. That's all
Hmm.
it is, but you have constant conversations.
Hmm.
You have to say this is important enough to think about and or talk about every single day until we have an idea. And every idea we have, try it. Hey, you're allowed to fail. That's the great thing about theater. And now we're going to bring it back to something positive. We
Hmm.
all fail. Every show, every theater has a failure. You learn, you get up, you move on to the next, you try it, you try to figure out what happened, and often it's better to just let it go away. you know,
Yeah,
we did what we thought was the best we
I
can,
know
and
it
we
doesn't make
failed. Now
sense.
let's move forward.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to long for something that you just couldn't make work.
Hmm.
You know, you couldn't make it work. Okay, so move on. move on with the mindset of like, oh, we got so close with that, but we couldn't make it work. But learn those lessons and move on to the next thing.
right? Which is why you have a post mortem on almost every show. Our show closed. It was a hit. It wasn't a hit. It was right in between. Let's
Yeah.
sit down, everyone, and talk about what went wrong. What went 1 hour. If that's all you have, you do it for 1 hour.
It's
And
not about going back. It's not about going back and rewriting history. It's about
right.
saying if something like this is in our is in our space moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
now we know because of this experience to be more aware of X. To make an adjustment for Y. And I think a lot. I also think a lot of people have a hard time just admitting that there was a problem. You know, because they
Mm-hmm.
always want to justify what happened. And I'm saying, okay, but this was a very specific situation. So how do we look at this moving forward so that we are not justifying specifics? We're
And
actually,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, we're
Sorry.
we're we're just looking at, okay, so we're going to give ourselves space, like a wide berth, so that we can
The other thing, though, which is real,
adjust.
especially in theater, we're such a collaborative art form.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's someone lower down on the totem pole who's going to explain to you that there's a toxic person in the midst
Mm,
that caused trouble. And because the people, the director or the leading actor or a costume designer, wasn't around that person, they didn't know how much trouble was being caused. And
yeah.
that's important to know. Sometimes you just go, got it. We don't want to hire that person again. Doesn't mean we're going to go after him. We're not laying blame. Did
Hmm.
not realize how much trouble this person was causing, even if it was inadvertently.
Yeah.
And so you learn something
Thanks for
automatically.
letting me know.
And out of if you're doing a Broadway show and there are 200 people, there's always somebody who's toxic, right? You don't know who's been drinking too much, who's in the wardrobe department, and it's important that it's shared. You try to help someone with their job, but there are too many good people looking for jobs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And
you don't have to settle for the people who aren't working out.
yeah, and then of
Yeah.
course at the top is the fish rots from the head. So the question, you look at your
Um,
board, you look at your artistic director, your managing director. What could they have done better if you don't want to outright say they were of no help at all, which hopefully nobody does.
yeah.
But
Well, unless you keep these people around because you look better in comparison,
possibly,
and that's always a problem
yeah.
too. It's like I have always walked into every situation saying the people on my team, I want the people on my team to be to bring something unique and but I also want them to be able to step in for me, if not take over uh, this thing that I had my hands on. I'm prepping a bench. I want strong people to work with me, not under me. I want
Right.
strong people to work with me,
But
and I
that's
want to help
that's
people
leadership. That's
build
not
that
what
for me.
most leaders of nonprofits or commercial ventures. I don't want to limit one of it. That's not what they're thinking. They're looking at power.
Mm,
That's our politicians. There are some. A great leader can rule with power and still makes everyone feel like they are part of their team. That they you can approach them at any moment. As you got that many people working for you. My God, it's exhausting. To have people come up to you, but all you need is the right person saying, my aunt knows somebody who, and you go, that's exactly what you're looking for.
yeah.
Great, thank you. And if you don't keep that door open, you're never going to meet that aunt or
Mm.
aunt, depending on where you're from. Orange, orange, you know.
And also, you can't be afraid of opportunities. And what I mean is, room for improvement. You
Oh
can't be
yeah,
afraid of those.
you're
Many
back to
people,
I'm ready to leave somewhere. Yeah,
no, I
absolutely.
just
No, no,
mean
it's right.
many people walk into meetings and they only want to tell you the things that are working. They're not
Oh, I
telling you
see.
the things that don't work. And yeah, it's like, well, what's the point of just telling us everything is great? You know, you've got all of these capable people here with you who could help you sort something out, but you're afraid to let them know that something didn't work out. It's like, don't be afraid. Like, I'm sure
Well,
you can get a bunch of ideas because you laid a strong foundation already, but you found out because of the foundation you laid that maybe one or two things didn't work.
hmm
But you can only go up from there. You're not going to say, should we scrap this whole thing because one part of it didn't work? No, it's like, well, is there a way to fix that? Well, yeah. I mean, I realized as soon as it happened that there was a way to adjust it. Okay, so let's make a note of that. So moving forward, we'll be aware of that.
right, right.
None of it is like, oh, you're fired, by the way, and thanks for the thanks for the notes on your way out.
No,
You
there
know,
are plenty of places that do that,
oh,
and
people are
people know it, and the people there know it, and that's the problem. It is so important for people not just to be told that, but to feel it just by the way that they're treated by people who come by and talk to them. Um, look, so much of its personality, right? As
yeah.
you know, especially when you get up into that higher echelon of control in
Mm,
theater. Who's making, on Broadway, the theater owners who are not creative people, they're deciding what shows we see. They have to decide they are willing to rent their theater to a particular show. They therefore need to trust and like the producer of a particular show. They also have to have seen the show and believe it will make them, the theater owners, money. That means there can be 40 phenomenal shows that will change our culture, but the producers that they already know and trust, who they say, when they tell me they're raising $15 million, I know they know how to do it. I'm not going to
mm,
have to worry about them. They're the ones who get in the theater.
yeah.
So that's one thing. On the nonprofit level, I know of two theaters personally have done 3 or 4 original shows by the same playwright every summer. So aren't there more than one new playwright in your district or in your area? Is no one ever going to get another chance? And that's a question. It's like somebody would probably have to say, "Hey, I saw this show in the next, county. Maybe we should bring it over here." And an artistic director may go, "Nah, I like Joe, and we're just doing stuff with Joe. He wrote a good play." I the personalities. It's my old line. It's not who you know; it's who knows you.
Yeah.
And on that note, I'm going to. You said we have to know when to quit. Okay, bringing it right back to your work life balance.
Work-life balance. Yes.
Ballings.
Yes.
Sing
All
us
right.
out. Sing us out.
So we'll leave it there. Oh, that's where we'll leave it. Yeah, so we'll leave it there. The work-life balance conversation will continue. It never ends. I don't think anybody's gotten it right completely, but there are a lot of great ideas if people would just get out of their own way and explore them. But it's tough. It's tough on many different levels, but it is possible. They wouldn't be talking about a work-life balance if it was absolutely impossible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I know people do it. Like, people who wanna have children, but they still have jobs.
Yeah.
And, so if you think that, because you have to, call your mom every day at certain time, then that you
Well,
can't do
and
whatever,
it comes
then
down
that's
to a
it.
woman. When a woman says, "I'm pregnant," there are still I don't want to name them. There are still
Mhm.
theater companies in 5 seconds will go, okay, when do you turn in your
Mhm.
resignation? Or in their head, they're going, let's see, it's January, so by somewhere around July, we'll have to replace her
Yeah.
permanently, as
Oh,
opposed to we'll give you some time off as we should, because guess what? That's a natural thing to do, and you're allowed to have a life,
yeah.
right? It's
It's a great opportunity to recruit an intern.
to take over, yeah.
Yeah. Here, you're gonna have big shoes to fill.
You do know how to sew, don't you?
Yeah. You don't, you'll learn. You'll learn on the job. Half of the job is learning,
That's
there you
right.
go. Okay. Take this
And we
with
have
you.
the Salvation Army down the block if you really need it. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I'm, pretty much not available if you have any questions, so good luck. Alright, well, that's the business of theater, a working title. I'm Darnell Radford.
And we did a lot of woes
We
today.
did a lot of woes,
A lot
yes.
of woes.
There's a
And
whole bunch.
wait a minute before we sign off. And I'm Mitch Weiss. And together, I
I
wish,
wish more than anything.
more than anything.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.